How often have I desired to gather you? Isn't that the longing of every parent, to protect their children from harm's way? I don't know if any parent or of any parent in their right minds who wishes harm upon their children. No, most, if not all, parents want their children to be safe and full of joy. Yet we know that each has their own choice to make when the time comes. To be a parent is absolutely one of the most amazing and miraculous things to happen to parents. And mercy parenting sure can be gut-wrenching too, can't it? We want what we think is best, most optimal for our offspring, and still they carefully tend to their needs. They carefully grow into their own, and at some point they begin making their own choices. Some great, some kind of bad, and sometimes they just get quite fortunate. We have to remember today that Jesus is the Son of the Father. And as such, he is on his way to Jerusalem in Luke's Gospel when he is confronted with some Pharisees warning that Herod wants to kill him. You want to say, no kidding, Jesus knows this. We know this. Jesus may not have been the most sophisticated. He certainly was not part of the upper class of society, but he was very, very smart. He knew about Herod and about Herod's reputation as a brutal and callous figure, willing to take out anyone perceived to be in his way. After all, Herod had his people kill John, Jesus' first cousin, on a drunken dare during one of his fancy dinner parties. Jesus knew that going to Jerusalem, he was going to encounter the Herods of his day, but he continued on, despite the Pharisees' apt warning. Go and tell that fox for me, listen, I'm casting out demons, performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day I finish my work. Jesus sticks to his mission of setting people free, of bringing new life. I admire Jesus in this. He doesn't get deterred. He's warned of Herod, the horribles running and gunning for him, but Jesus will not have anything to do with the Pharisees' intimidating warning. He stands for love in action. Jesus stands for a sense of belonging deeper than any definition and research Brene Brown can ever muster. And I enjoy me some Brene Brown writing and podcast. With the Pharisees' warning, Jesus reprises the lament of the prophets of old. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, the city that kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to it. How often have I desired to gather your children together as a hen gathers her brood under her wings, and you were not willing. Jesus is doing the work he set out to do, casting out demons, performing cures today and tomorrow, and on the third day finishing his work. What about this casting out, though, and curing? What is that about anyway? We hear about it a lot, and it seems kind of strange, I think, to our 21st century thinking. When we're possessed by something, anything, our life can be taken away from us. You know, it used to be that we could say, if you're possessed of something, to find out what you're possessed of, look at your checkbook. That was a quick way to figure out what is it that possesses you. Where do you spend most of your time and energy? If you did a quick look at your bank statement, you're like, oh, well, okay, I may be possessed by that. Today, we could say, look at your Google search history. You know, check out your Google search history. What is it that you are fixated upon? And that may be something possessing you. What do we think of when Jesus mentions casting out demons? It doesn't have to be scary, creepy ghost with iron links. Have we ever witnessed our sister or brother under the demon of addiction? It could be drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be gambling or stealing, any other number of demons. You better believe, though, that a person under the throes of the addiction demon has lost their life. They have lost their freedom of will and of choice. What about the demon of pride and arrogance? That's another demon. Knowing without a shadow of a doubt, we are right. If only people would follow our plans, then obviously the world would be a better place to live, right? I've said that before. Maybe you haven't. I know what's going on. Yes, pride and arrogance will end up taking the joy and the freedom out of abundant living from anyone's grasp. performing cures, though, one can't help but be a different person once we have been touched by the healing hand of Christ. All sorts of conditions need cured in Jesus' world yesterday and today. But once one has been touched, once we have experienced the healing heart of Jesus, our true nature as God's beloved shines through us more brightly than ever. Jesus doesn't have time to mess around with Herod today because he is on a mission of radical freedom, freeing folks from whatever it is that binds them, whatever it is that binds us. He travels from region to region, casting out, healing, curing, that their hearts and our hearts and minds may be more attuned to God's reconciling love in our lives. But what does one do when we are faced with the reality that the way our religion's being practiced, that might be the freedom limiting factor? What do we do today when we begin to recognize that some parts of our church community might be freedom limiting rather than freeing to know God in a more intimate way? We might well have a challenging time today if Jesus joined the church with a capital C and began asking questions, as Jesus was wont to do as he walked and talked. Why is such and such done this way or that way? Jesus might ask. That kind of practice really doesn't provide people the freedom to put God's love into action in any sort of freer manner. You know, you say all are welcome because all belong, but in this area, I'm not really sure I feel too welcome. These are really, really hard questions and challenges that are important to keep in mind as we continue as a faith community to shift and to adjust and to come out on the other side of the pandemic and to continue to live our lives faithfully as we examine our faith and as we practice our faith. Because Jesus, in living out his faith, wasn't deterred by the Pharisees' warning. He continued on his way to Jerusalem where he faced death on the cross, but through that death experienced new and freeing and abundant life like even Jesus had never known before. He continued on his way, working his wonders, casting out demons. He continued freeing people, and we too are invited to a life of freedom. We are invited to see the face of Christ on each other. And mercy, is that hard sometimes? Yeah, it can be challenging. We're invited to work together for the common good, side by side. We are called to pray for ourselves. We're called to pray for others, together and alone in this building space, in coffee shops, on the internet, and all sorts of other places. And there are Herods who don't want our relationship with Christ deepened, because when we allow ourselves to go deeper and deeper with Jesus, we begin noticing where we fall short. We begin noticing where maybe some injustices are occurring. And we start to have the courage to speak out. We start to have the courage to say, oh, this is where I've fallen short. I need to make amendment of my life to God and to my fellow. That's not always easy work. As we allow ourselves to go deeper with God on the way to Jerusalem, we begin opening our minds and our hearts just a bit to the possibility that we've strayed from the way of love. We might even have to change our worldview as it's challenged. It might be changed a bit. When we ignore the warning and we go deeper with God, we might develop this sense of wonderment that what would Jesus have me to do in whatever the situation is? And then we begin living in new and really life-giving ways. And this inner and this outer transformation is sometimes scary and sometimes very exciting. Herod's still out there, we know, but we know that Christ is in here. As Jesus was warned and challenged about Herod's desire to kill him, Jesus' courage and resolve grew. As we are challenged by the Herods of our own day, may we use such challenges to create greater clarity of our mission, of our purpose. Our business as followers of Jesus is to love God, to love self, to love others. Jesus is clear about God's work. We get to be courageously clear about our community of love today, too. Amen.